Donald Trump gave a number of high-profile speeches during his Asia trip, though most Americans would be hard-pressed to remember the details. He pushed for a regional response to North Korea's continued work on missile and nuclear weapons programs. He touted trade issues and American jobs, albeit by criticizing his presidential predecessors. He repeatedly used the term Indo-Pacific as a way to emphasize the importance of India in U.S. strategic plans for the region. In the U.S., however, the news cycle churned on without him. The Sutherland Springs shooting overshadowed his first weekend abroad. The Republican rout in Virginia state elections stole midweek headlines. 2 days later, The Washington Post broke bombshell allegations that 4 decades ago Roy Moore, the Republican nominee in an Alabama special election to replace Jeff Sessions in the U.S. Senate, had sexually abused a 14-year-old. All were bigger stories than the presidential foreign forays. By far. It's a challenge for presidents to garner attention when they re abroad short of an international crisis or a massive gaffe, even when they aren't flying into the kind of domestic news headwinds Mr. Trump encountered over the past 10 days. Trump had plenty of gaffes of the non-massive kind, of course, some real, some overplayed by media outlets eager to confirm the suspicions of the president's detractors. The first was the koi carp feeding episode, when the U.S. president emptied a whole box of food into the koi pond. But it turned out Mr. Trump had simply followed the lead of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Then the president's comments about how Japanese auto companies ought to manufacture cars in the U.S. were taken out of context, compounded by his convoluted syntax. It was enough for Jeet here at the left-leaning New Republic to call foul on his colleagues. This quickness to pile on the president, at the expense of policy analysis, illustrates a growing problem on the left, he writes. Liberals and their media allies are becoming knee-jerk anti-Trumpists, always on the lookout for the president's next embarrassing, memeable gaffe, and sometimes pouncing without getting their facts straight. Then there were controversies more grounded in reality. The president's insistence that Vladimir Putin believes Russia didn't meddle in the 2016 U.S. elections and his swipes at former leaders of the U.S. intelligence community as hacks required him to later affirm his support for U.S. intelligence agencies. The Putin story was further fueled by Mr. Trump's Twitter habit, as he lashed out at the media and crooked Hillary Clinton. He called his critics haters and fools who did not understand that a friendly relationship with Russia was a good thing. The biggest Twitter bombshell, however, came when the president bristled at Kim Jong-un for calling him old, grousing that he would never call the North Korean leader short and fat. I try so hard to be his friend, he continued, and maybe someday that will happen. The line was grist for late-night U.S. comics and unleashed 1,000 hot takes across the media landscape. The volubility of the president's tweets from the Philippines stood in sharp contrast to the first half of his foreign trip, where he was relatively restrained. It added some credence to the theory that Melania Trump, who parted ways with the president after their China visit, can be a moderating influence on the president. Mr. Trump has frequently boasted about the power of his tweets, having called them modern-day presidential. No matter where he is, at the White House, in one of his golf resorts or thousands of miles around the globe, his Twitter feed can cut through the noise and add to the headaches of the White House staff. The president wouldn't have it any other way. You know they are well crafted, Mr. Trump told an interviewer who asked him about his Twitter usage last month. I was always a good student. I am like a person that does well with that kind of thing. And I doubt I would be here if it weren't for social media, to be honest with you. Mr. Trump made it to the top office in the U.S. in part thanks to his prolific use of social media to drive news coverage. Chances are, his short and fat tweet will be the lasting impression most Americans take from the president's trip to Asia.